All right, another episode of the House of Jeans podcast. This is a real pleasure because I have an actual friend on here, Joey Harty. Joey, you've done a bunch of stuff. Director of High Performance for Sporting Kansas City.
Yep.
You started there and kind of worked your way up from an assistant strength coach and got to see the big picture there.
Yeah.
And then now you have your own company, Harty Performance. So we're going to talk about all of that. But for the people that may not know you the way I know you, as a husband and a father and just a great friend, why don't you tell people about your time with Sporting KC and kind of what you did there and like what does a director of high performance actually mean?
Yeah, no, this is a pleasure. I mean, obviously we've talked a lot. Our paths have crossed in an amazing way over the years, which is super cool. Definitely a God thing, which is so cool. The biggest thing for me, I guess, in being in Kansas City that I appreciate is I was afforded the opportunity to work under a staff and a system that had very good continuity, and that is not normal in professional sports. That I had the head coach and general manager in one person who was there for a really long time.
Yeah.
And so what I learned early on, and I was fortunate to have probably more responsibility than I deserved early when I was at Kansas City, being that they trusted me, that they gave me a lot to fit into their system, but they had methods and ways of doing things from a soccer perspective, from a recruitment perspective, from a development perspective, so that myself coming in as a strength conditioning coach was really coming in to support the processes that they already had in place. And I think that was really good for me as a young coach. And a young practitioner. And so that grew over time. Like you said, I started at the bottom, if you will, but really working with the developmental athletes and supporting the senior team. And through the time there, I was fortunate, again, like I said, for good opportunities, and I finished into that high performance director role that I was really able to oversee all the performance processes from the first team all the way down to the academy.
So how many staff are you kind of managing at that point?
Yeah, it varied over years, and it grew. Obviously, as the league has grown, that more staff is added to that. But you're talking nutrition, strength conditioning, sports science primarily. Our model was unique in that we had a sports medicine team and sports performance team that worked collaboratively. Some models, you have someone that really sits over the top and kind of governs both departments. We really worked in parallel, and that was just, I think, because of the systems and continuity we had as an organization, that relationally we were really able to kind of mesh well together.
Yeah, so for people that don't know, some departments, they have one leader that oversees everything.
Correct.
But at KC, you had a teammates where you guys kind of went over both your emphases and then would always come together as a staff.
Exactly.
Which is not easy to do.
It's not easy, and there's a reason. In a lot of high performance environments, it's the CEO, right? You have a high performance leader over sports medicine and sports performance, just to make sure that everyone's aligned, so that you can give the right information to stakeholders. For us, like you said, I had a great teammate at Sporting Kansas City, and we were able to be together as the sports medicine, sports performance team and kind of co-lead those departments.
Yeah.
But that was under the direction, again, we had a good head coach that was able to help us be aligned in those areas.
So we are going to talk about leadership a little bit.
Yeah.
But I think for a lot of strength coaches who potentially could get to that role, or a sports scientist, they're always thinking like, oh, I can't wait to be the director. Would you kind of give some insight into what the role is? And we don't want to discourage anyone, but for some people it may not be the right fit. You know, what are the qualities that are really required to take a position like that?
Yeah, I mean, you don't realize the amount, and I knew this because I worked under a director prior to myself at Kansas City, and there were things that I always wondered why they weren't a certain way until I was in his position. And you start to realize the questions that are being queried to you from leadership, from ownership, from coaching staff, and you start to think about, okay, we're wanting to do these gym programs with these athletes because on paper, it's the perfect scenario. But when you're talking about that 1% and winning is what you're really aiming for, you have to be so careful to make sure that everything you do has a positive effect on the athletes. We can't risk having a negative effect. And so having to answer to ownership and leadership in the director role, then you start to think through things in a little bit differently. And that's not out of fear. It's really just you have to evaluate everything that you're doing, everything that the athletes are doing. And so you just need to make sure that you have an answer and a why behind the systems that are in place. And so any young practitioner that wants to be a director, like, aspire for that. It's awesome, but you need the experience. You need to keep developing and make sure that you're sure of why you're doing what you're doing before you get to those roles.
What do you do when you don't have the answer right away? Sometimes in pro sports, the GM or the head coach are like, hey, I have a question for you right now.
Yeah.
I know when I was a young coach, I felt the pressure to like have an answer.
Yeah.
and I had to learn my own way of doing that. What was
Yeah.
your style if like you're like, hey, I don't know the answer right now?
I learned over time. I definitely did not do it perfectly, but I would say like best advice is just have humility. I mean, the best thing that I think I was able to do was not pretend that I had the answers, because
Yeah.
also when you're talking to elite stakeholders, general managers, owners, head coaches, they can sniff out if you're making something up. If you don't really have the answer, then just be transparent and honest, and I think that people will receive the humility in that very well, but then seek to find that answer. Don't just say, oh, I don't know. Say, I will get back to you on that. And so for me, I think one of my biggest assets is that I always developed a strong network of professionals around me. And so I'd always seek outside advice, and to kind of find that general counsel of different domains, specifically in this world, in this environment, like who are the leaders and experts in sports science, nutrition, strength conditioning, rehabilitation, and seek out those individuals just to make sure that we knew that we were aligned in terms of like what best practice was. And I think that gave ownership and leadership a lot of trust in me, and knowing that, hey, they're trying to be the best that they can be and they're seeking out outside input.
I wasn't going to go this direction, but the way that you're saying it about trying to find out who are the best professionals, and I know for you it's not just about who has the most expertise. You care about the human side too. Like who can I work with that I respect and that I can trust? I'm actually thinking about the hiring side. What is your process to find the right fit there? Because I know for you, you're not just like, who's the smartest person out there, right? But you still want to make sure you find someone competent because that's your name on the line. So what's your process when it comes to hiring high performers in any of these emphases?
Yeah, I mean, I hate the cliche of it's not about what you know, it's about who you know. But when you've gone through the hiring process enough, and I've done it for the organization I was at for a long time, I've done it for other organizations, when you post job applications, the amount of people that apply for it, and you start going through these resumes, sometimes there's people with really good experience and it sets them apart, but they might be a 10th connection that you have on LinkedIn, right, as that scenario. And so trying to find first, second, or third connections to people is so valuable, to just have a voice that you can trust that can say, hey, I know Daniel Guzman and he's a good person. Because you don't only have to think about what do they know as a sports scientist or strength and conditioning coach, you have to think about who's the current staff, how do you as a leader operate, how do the coaches operate, and you're thinking about, would that personality type fit in? Are they someone who is eager to learn, or are they someone that can adapt well, or are they just someone who's used to doing it a certain way and they need to stick in that methodology? And so I'm always looking for someone that can vouch for another person, but then usually that's in line with, are they adaptable, are they willing to learn, do they have a humility trait, which is super valuable.
So network's really important.
Super valuable.
How do you do that when you're a young coach, and still keep it really authentic to growing that network?
Yeah.
Or do you think it should just be not in an inauthentic way, but it's like meet as many people as you can when you're a young coach?
Meet as many people as you can, but I think, again, I've said it 5 or 6 times, but I think back to being a young coach, and now that I've had other coaches reach out to me, and I'm a young coach in my own respect to older peers, but to have the humility to say, hey, I want to learn from you, instead of pretending like you have the answers. I think there's this, and I feel it, right? There's almost this feeling of like you want to know everything, and so you don't want to come across like you don't know, whatever it is that you're talking about. And so when you seek out somebody or you try to make connections, know what it is that you want to learn from that person. Know what they are good at. And so then you have the ability to say, hey, Daniel, I know that you're an expert in terms of human genetics, genomics. In terms of genetics, and you're building in that space, and so I want to seek you out because I want to learn from you in that world. And so you find people in the respected domains, and actually ask those questions. So as a young coach or young practitioner, when you go to these conferences, do your homework ahead of time on who's speaking. Know what they're good at, and then ask them pointed questions. And I think that'll help kind of get the ball rolling in terms of those relationships.
It's a really good perspective, because sometimes you just go to a conference because you're like, oh, I know there's going to be people there, but I'm just going to show up and learn. But you're saying, look at the speaker list, go learn about their bios, and maybe there's something you're really curious about, and then seek them out and say, hey, I'd love to learn more about this at the right time, if it's now or after.
For sure.
We're at PBT right now, obviously. I know a lot of people have come to you after you had a lecture presentation and a practical. And so it's a lot of people to kind of hear what your thought process is, but also see it in real time. Right? So actually seeking that out, I think that's really beneficial. One thing I want to pivot to that, again, not a lot of people have this experience.
Yeah.
You do because you've led a team. I've led some teams. And one thing that I think is not talked about a lot is, I don't know if balance is the right term, but for people that are parents, right, you start having children, one of the biggest struggles you and I have talked about at some point is you go to work and you start thinking about, oh, my little one is just crawling. Like, I want to be there, or I want to get home earlier for this. But you still want to be a high performer. You still have an obligation. And so how do you manage that early stage? I think as your kids get a little bit older, you get a little bit better at it.
Yeah.
I got to go to work, and, you really prioritize. But in the early stages, we're just figuring it out.
Yeah.
How did you balance with that almost like warfare in your brain of like, I want to be a high performer at work, but I also want to be present as a dad?
Yeah. I don't know that I had the answer for that. I think you kind of figure it out as you go. It definitely is that tough balance, right? You don't know how important family is until you start one of your own, right? And you don't know how important your wife is until you get married. You don't know how important your kids are until they're your own. But you know instantly, and so like for me, it's just amazing to have that. Like, and I'm so grateful to have a wife and a family that supports me, and a wife and a family that I want to go home to.
Yeah.
But I'm ambitious. I love the work that we do. Like, working in team sports and just being in that environment is like nothing else, right? I think that's what makes team sports unique, is that you are working collaboratively with a team of individuals towards a common goal. And so I think being able to just like keep that in your mind of, I'm here to serve the team, I'm here to serve the athletes, I'm here to support the coaches.
Yeah.
And you can do that while still being a good father at home, while still being a good husband at home. And so I think it was just trying to pick out the one things that I needed to be good at, which was when I would go home, try to leave work as much as possible at work. But when I was at work, also having the balance with my family of like, hey, I need to go in early. I need to make sure that I got everything in line so that when I do come home, like, I know that everything is prepared for the next day. I'm not thinking about what's still on my plate. I'm not leaving tasks not fulfilled, and so I got everything lined up. And just having systems in place for yourself, I think, especially as a leader, when people are looking to you to kind of set the standard in certain respects, especially in the weight room, in the training room, like on the field, you have to make sure that like you don't miss a mark, because it's a fast-paced environment, and especially in team sports, that if you're not prepared for something, people pick up on that.
Yeah, it seems like a common theme with all these high performers is preparation. One thing you just talked about is when you're leading, whether it's your staff or the players, right? We do lead players in a certain way. The players start to understand what your style is, and they have a respect for you. I know that you're very humble, so you're not just going to say how great you are, which I appreciate. I think we're the same in that. But if you talk to any player that's worked with you, they have the greatest thing to say about you. What are some things that you commit to on a daily basis that help you stay focused and really who you are? It can be easy to get distracted sometimes and kind of lose your identity in these kind of things.
For sure.
But a lot of people have so much respect for you because you serve them.
Yeah.
And you keep a great perspective for them. So what are some things that just worked for you? What is like kind of your style if people want to figure that out?
One thing that's unique as a coach, right? And I always like, you go down this path of high performance, especially in sports. We start as a coach, and so I never want to lose that. No matter what I'm doing in sports, I always want to remind myself like that I'm a coach first. And so as a coach, I do believe there's an obligation to bring energy, and I don't mean energy as in like you're this raw person, but there is positivity that needs to be present in your daily interactions, and that's a choice. And so there are things that go on in people's life, and as you know, working in team sport for a long time, like there are personal circumstances in athletes' life, in coaches' lives, in your own life. And so like if you can just be as consistent as you can be in terms of whatever your best day is, if you can always try to bring that and not to fake it, but also to make sure that you're in line with that level of yourself, I think other people feed off of that energy. And then the other side of it as a coach is you're dealing with people, right? You have this program, you have all these things that's on paper, and it's one thing. But there may be something going on in someone's life psychologically that's affecting how they're presenting on that day. And so being able to have that relationship and that dynamic, which does require cultivation with the athletes to where you can just see it on someone's face. We're talking and you say, hey, Daniel, you seem a little bit off today. You okay? Yeah, man, like I got some stuff going on at home. Okay, do you want to do the lift today? Do you want, and you just start having those conversations, and it becomes not hey, you can skirt the work today. It becomes more of all of a sudden Joey's asking me. He cares enough about me as a person more so than what he's telling me to do. And so all of a sudden it becomes, I guess, a very joint process between athlete and coach. Mm-hmm. And so I think as I went through that, I learned a lot more, and becoming a father also helped me understand, because there were older athletes than me. I started similar to you early on, where I didn't have kids, but athletes were having kids, and I didn't really understand. It's like I'd ask them to do probably more than they were able to do when they just had a kid and they're tired. Yep. And so just finding that balance and learning that there's a real human element to every interaction that you have.
So you did that before you had kids, and you said it kind of improved after, but where did you learn that? Like, how could someone learn how to do this early on? Is it finding the right people that already do that? Is it a book you read? Like, how could you actually find it, be really good at relationships?
I think first and foremost, you have to just put yourself in situations to actually communicate with people, interact with people. I've heard you talk about this before. Like, it would be very easy if you're traveling with a team to just sit in your hotel room all the time, but to make choices to actually go be around the individuals that you are working with. I made a conscious effort with the coaches that I worked with to always be in coaches meetings, to be in film sessions, to bridge that gap from what I believe my side of the game was and what their side of the game was. And so to kind of be aligned there. And so I just say, build those connections, build those bridges in whatever your environment is. And then the other side of it is, you can go to these conferences and all that. That's so important. But it's the follow-ups after that. And we traveled for sport. A lot of times, like, it'd be trying to get coffee with someone. It'd be just shooting someone a text saying, hey, I'd love to connect for 5 minutes before the game tonight. And building relationships like you and I did, where it's just, little bite-sized chunks over time. But then if you can cultivate that, like, you can grow deep relationships with people without necessarily having, like, the daily interactions.
That's true. You kind of look forward to it. It's like every time we're going away to Kansas City, I'm hitting up you and Kurt.
Yep.
Saying, you want to get dinner the night before? Do you want to meet up before?
Yep.
And you're right. Sometimes you're like, I got family stuff at night, but before, let's meet up for 20 minutes.
For sure.
And you're right, those little interactions. And like, that doesn't happen in every city.
Yeah.
Some cities you just fly into, you do your job, you take off, but then there's opportunities to hang with friends over time and build up.
Sure.
In fact, like, I love going to away games, and because there's less setup for us, like watching your warm-up. Yep. I'd always watch Sean Muldoon in Seattle. Love watching like what you guys are doing, and because it's different than all of us, you know.
Sure.
And I'd look at like what is your tempo? What is your facial expressions? How are you talking to guys? I think that stuff's really important. One thing I want to close up on, because we keep these podcasts pretty tight, is you and I have longer careers, whatever projects we're going to do.
Yep.
I don't think we're wrapped up in our identity about what we do. We have a different faith of who we are and what our projects are in this moment. But would you quickly talk about what your current project is you're working on? You started your own business, and kind of what the evolution that is from leaving team sport to now running a business?
Yep, for sure. I would say it's been a big learning curve, and it's a huge growth opportunity for me, where now I have multiple things that I'm having to keep my mind on. But I love it. Like, the engagement side of it is huge. I think of my business as two sides. I have a consulting piece and a coaching piece. The coaching piece I want to continue to cultivate as long as I see feasible forever in my mind, because I enjoy it. I think coaching athletes is just a part of what I really do enjoy. But the consulting piece is where I think I also can really add value. And so I have a couple collegiate teams that I work with. I have a professional team in the NWSL that I work with, really about supporting performance staff, medical staff, and coaching staff. Everything from planning and periodization, return to play protocols, to systemization with warm-ups, strength training, recovery. And I have a big passion for that. And I really believe I can add a lot of value to organizations who are seeking that high performance edge.
Totally, yeah.
And so that's kind of the direction that I'm going in right now. Ask me in 6 months, it might be a little bit different, but today that's my biggest focus.
Yeah, and there's a lot going on, like you said. I mean,
For
managing
sure.
a team is one thing. When it's your own business, right, then you're always on, you never sleep.
Yeah.
The last thing we'll end on is this. You and I both have kids. As your kids are getting older, and they're going to hear stories from maybe some of your colleagues or buddies about who dad was, what is a legacy that you want to leave behind, where if they think about, like, oh, I know who my dad is, but then all these people are saying the same thing, what is that thing that you want them to say? Kind of a legacy talk.
Yeah, no, it's a great question, something good to think about. I think the biggest thing, I think about my dad, and everything that he has said, and what I hear people say about him, I'd say is what I would hope for me. You have someone who's consistent, you have someone who's loyal, you have someone who's well respected, and someone who's humble, you know, and I think those are all traits that he possesses and that he has done as a leader in all of his own domains and endeavors that he's pursued. And so I think if I could follow in those steps, that would be a huge compliment to myself, but also to him.
Yeah, shout out Dan Harty.
Yep.
He runs a little project called Delay the Decay.
Delay
right?
the Decay. Yep.
Yeah, I've done a little podcast with him before.
Yeah.
And you're right, your dad is definitely very intentional, and he just wants to help so many people, and he's got a wealth of knowledge.
Yep.
So if you're gonna go after someone else, I think that's a pretty good person to
For sure.
represent a legacy for.
Yeah, no doubt.
That's really cool. Well, I appreciate you coming on here. Again, this is the House of Jeans podcast. Joey Harty runs Harty Performance and has this extensive career in professional soccer, and it's still continuing. So thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, for sure.
Appreciate it.
You.